The Starfleet life with the USS Dauntless. Are you brave enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes? Yeah, I keep doing that. Greetings, I am Admiral Owen Swart, Commanding Officer, USS Dauntless, and this is the briefing with the Admiral for Stardate -269582.1. I am the Admiral in question, and today we're going to be talking about the Security Department. But before we get to that, let me first explain what we are talking about. In fact, before we get to that, let me welcome our crew members who are here. So we do these briefings typically every Tuesday at 12:30 South African Standard Time, streamed live in our Discord server, that is the USS Dauntless Discord server. We also stream it out to YouTube. And then we upload the video to both YouTube and to Facebook, so you can watch it after the fact. If you are an active duty member of the crew, you're welcome to join us in Discord in the Screening Room channel, and you can participate in the chat if you like. It's a Priority 3 mission, which means it's not mandatory. You're not expected to attend, but we are welcome to attend and to join us for the recording session. And to acknowledge those who have joined us here this morning, we've got Colonel Joubert, we've got Captain Van Kreunen, back from his adventures over in Region 16. We've got Master Chief Kotzer and Senior Chief Newton. I'm sure we'll have more join during the session. That is often the case, but the four of you, welcome so long. If you do decide to stop in and join us here in Discord during the duration of the recording today, please make sure that you say hi in the chat. If you drop us a message in the chat, that makes it easier for me to do a roll call after the fact. I can see who was here. Even if you're only popping in for a couple of minutes, that's fine. Just drop us a thumbs up or a wave, or just say hello, or ask a question, or make a comment, anything like that in the chat, so that I can scroll back up through the chat and see who was here without having to review the entire video to see who I gave explicit shout outs to during the video. All right, with that out of the way, let us proceed with today's content. So, right, what am I talking about? The Security Department? What even is the USS Dauntless? What is any of this stuff? So let's begin at the beginning. What is the USS Dauntless? We are a Star Trek fan club based in Cape Town, South Africa. We're a Starfleet-style club, complete with ranks, titles, and uniforms. So a Star Trek fan club is accurate, but it's not... using that term doesn't really give you a complete picture of what we are. We're more than just that. We're also a community. We're a social movement. We are an engine for change. We're a number of different things, but fan club, while incomplete, is not inaccurate. So we are that, as well as many other things. Based in Cape Town, South Africa, that is where our official headquarters are, although most of our activities take place online. So we have a digital presence here on Discord and in various other places, but Discord is our hub. So we are based both in Cape Town, South Africa and on Discord. We're a Starfleet-style club complete with ranks, titles, and uniforms. You'll notice that I'm wearing a uniform. That is normally the case. Each of us aboard the Dauntless have a rank that we've earned through various activities, typically in real life doing things, earns us recognition, and one of the forms of recognition is rank advancements. We also have titles. Titles go with the responsibility that we have taken on. We'll go into more detail about titles as we progress through today's talk, but that is the thing that we have. My title, as I mentioned, is Commanding Officer. We're also a chapter of Starfleet, the International Star Trek Fan Association Incorporated, we are the largest Star Trek fan club in the world. And we have thousands of members in hundreds of chapters across dozens of countries. What is a chapter? A chapter is what we are. So there are plenty of groups in cities around the world, and those little groups of Starfleet International members are organized into chapters. The metaphor that we use to describe our chapters is starships. So each chapter is a starship. Obviously, it's not a real starship. It's a conceptual or metaphorical starship. It is an ideological vehicle that carries the crew together on their voyage, on their mission. So again, the starship is not a ship. The starship is the crew. And we are not just an online group. We also get together for social events like away missions, games days, hikes, 5K runs, paintball conventions, movie nights, and lots more. We do a lot of stuff in person in addition to being an online group. But our place where all of our coordination and communication happens is online, primarily here on Discord. So because we are organized along the lines of the fictional Starfleet. We are not an exploratory organization. We are not a space navy or anything like that. Any of those adjectives you might use to describe the fictional Starfleet. The real Starfleet is none of those things. We are principally a fan club, but we do other things as well. But we have modeled our organizational structures after the fictional Starfleet so that we have some familiar sounding names to our organizational structures. One of the ways we do that is within our chapters and within our various other organizational units. They are structured in the form of departments. So each department will handle a specific aspect of life within that installation. So in an installation like a chapter, like the USS Dauntless, various departments handle different parts of life aboard ship. And today we're going to be talking about the security department. The security department, security department is tasked with keeping of the keys of the ship. So they are in charge of, let's call it risk management. That's probably the shortest way of saying that. But we'll go into more detail about what all of that means. I flipped over a slide here that I want to just mention here, and that is our mission. What is the Dauntless for? What do we do? Our mission is to bring the message of Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future vision for the future of humankind to people of Africa and the Middle East. What is that vision? The vision is Star Trek. So Gene Roddenberry, this guy over here, is the original creator of the Star Trek franchise, and he envisioned a future in which, through things like social, economic, technological, and scientific advancement, the world has changed on its head. All of the problems, or most of the problems that we have to deal with today, things like crime, poverty, disease, that kind of thing, they've all or mostly been eliminated, at least on Earth, if not within the entire galaxy. So we, as members of this organization, we want to promote that vision of an idyllic future that can be obtained through nothing but human hard work and determination and attitudinal adjustments. So we promote the idea of Star Trek, and we also promote various social initiatives that we hope will help to steer civilization in that direction. So our mission is clarified in a number of standing orders. The one we're going to be talking about today, a little bit later, but it relates to the security department, is standing order number 2, which is to encourage initiatives to help bring about the future envisioned in Star Trek. So we see this idyllic future that Gene Roddenberry has depicted for us in the Star Trek franchise, and we want to try and create initiatives that will help to move society in that direction, in whatever small way we possibly can. Now, we do a number of things in that arena, but there's one specific one that relates to the science department, the security department, and that relates to this clarification here, which is working to better ourselves mentally and physically. That clarification, that point, falls largely under the auspices of the medical department, and I've done a separate briefing on the medical department not that long ago, so if you'd like to learn more about them, you can go look there. But there's one particular aspect, and again, we'll go into that in more detail. Just remember, for a few minutes from now, this is what we're talking about. Standing order number 2, working to better ourselves mentally and physically. It's a concept we refer to as mission readiness that relates to the security department. All right, so let us move on to describing the security department. The security department is tasked with keeping of the keys for the ship. The volunteers in this department assist the other volunteers on board by making sure they each have access to the necessary ship systems in order to perform their respective duties. So there's a necessary explanation at this point. We recently did a briefing video like this on the engineering department, in which we described how the engineers are responsible for managing the various online assets that we have. We use a variety of different digital platforms for various different purposes. Discord, of course, being the most important one, but I've mentioned already several others that we use, things like YouTube, Facebook, even looking at our Google Sites website here. All of those platforms are managed on our behalf by the engineering department. But each of those platforms also has access privileges. So each of us is a user, and we log onto that service, and we need to be able to access the parts of that service that are relevant to our duties within the ship. And the people who are responsible for making sure that we each have the relevant access is the security department, specifically the volunteers within the security department. So managing the platform itself is engineering, managing the access to that department is security. Both of those teams are coordinating with each other, obviously, at all times, making sure that they know what the other team is doing, and both are working under instruction from the command department, and we'll be doing the command department briefing next week. Security works closely with command in determining who should have access, with engineering in ensuring that they can have access, and with operations in ensuring that they have the access that they need. So, operations department, again, I've done a briefing like this on operations. They are the ones that make sure that everybody has the necessary resources that they need to function. So let's say you are a volunteer in a given department of the ship. You determine that you need a certain level of access to a particular tool. You would approach the operations team and say, excuse me, please, I need access to this tool. Operations would then send out a work order to either engineering or security, possibly both, requesting that you be given that necessary access. Security will review the access privileges, will review the request, and they will check with engineering to make sure that it's possible to give you that level of access. If necessary, they will run it up the chain to command to ensure that you are actually authorized to access the system in that way. Assuming everything gets green check marks all the way down, they will then provision that access to you, either a security department member or an engineering department member, or possibly even command, depending on the system. That's pretty complicated. We'll go into a bit more detail about how all of that stuff works as we proceed today. This whole section that we've been talking about now is the principal day-to-day business of the security department, but there is another aspect to security that doesn't relate to digital security, and we'll cover that shortly. But this is what most of the security team will be doing most of the time. Below are the volunteer duty station positions that fall under the security department. Active members who don't wish to volunteer may request to be assigned to security as a standard position with no duties allocated. So when we're talking about active duty personnel, so these are members who are actively involved in participating in Dauntless activities. They are separated into two groups: standard positions and duty stations. Duty stations are people who have committed to a certain set of deliverables, be that on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis, and are responsible for doing the work associated with those deliverables. So each one of those carries a job title, like, for example, commanding officer has a certain set of deliverables, but so does the chief security officer, and we'll look more at those in a moment. On the other side, standard position holders have no specific duties assigned. They are allocated to a department so they can form part of that department's team, and that allows them to help out in a more fluid or dynamic way. So whenever a specific need arises within that team, the standard position holders are available to assist according to their capacity. The hope would be that for every standard position holder, they would eventually move on and volunteer for a duty station position, especially if there are vacant duty stations within their department. But that is up to the personal preferences of each member of the crew, whether or not they're prepared to make that commitment, or if they prefer to remain fluid. And again, and also it's worth noting that even if you are a duty station holder, it doesn't mean that you can't still help out in other ways on board. It's even possible. It's rare, but it happens. It's possible to hold multiple duty station positions. You can be a volunteer in two different departments at the same time if you really, really want to, or you can just help out with other teams as needed and as is appropriate according to your access level and skill capabilities. But that's the difference between duty station and standard position. Duty stations have a specific list of duties that they are expected to perform, and standard positions have no list of duties. They help out when they can. If you'd like to request assignment to the security department as a standard position, this is the form. If you want to find this form, you go to our website and navigate to the departments section, head to security and click on that link. It'll take you to the relevant form. That request will then be evaluated by the senior staff, and you, if they approve, will be allocated to that department relatively shortly. These details up here, this is the symbol of the security department. Each department on board has a separate insignia, which is all a variation of our Dauntless insignia, but with the different divisional logo there. The branch of service color determines what color uniform the members of that team wear. So I am in the command department and I serve under the command branch of service. And with this particular uniform set, the 2373 uniform set, command means red. So my uniform here, you'll see my collar, my sleeve stripes, the color details on my uniform are red. In the operations branch of service, which includes the operations department, security department, communications, and engineering. Those are the four departments that fall under the operations branch of service. They all wear gold uniforms. So this would be sort of a mustardy gold color instead of red. The idea that red shirts are security officers, that is a period not native to us. The USS Dauntless, which is our chapter, we are set in the fictional time period of the 2370s. Whereas the security department hasn't worn red since the 2280s, I think, possibly older than that, further back than that, 2270s more like. So over a century, the security department has not worn red. So red shirts are not a feature of our time period. We do have red shirts on board, but we use that term differently here. To us, the red shirts are recruits. New recruits are when they join the Dauntless. They haven't yet selected a department. They are looked after by the command department, and while they are at a recruit status, they are encouraged to wear a red uniform color. So red shirts to us mean newbies, not security officers. All right, let's look at the activities of the security department. So the first part is the stuff that we've talked about already. So that's managing access to the Dauntless's online systems, which is adjusting access privileges. This is something that happens most often in places like Discord. Whenever somebody changes a status, any kind of change of status, that will typically have an impact on what systems on board they would have access to. So what kind of status do I mean? If you have changed rank, for example, you've received a rank promotion, that might change your status because you perhaps are no longer an enlisted personnel, you are now a commissioned officer. That would mean you would lose access to any sections of the Dauntless Discord server that are applicable only to non-coms, and would now only have access to sections that are relevant to officers. Perhaps you've moved from standard position to duty station. That would also open up additional sections of the Dauntless Discord. Perhaps you've moved from one department to another. Perhaps you've moved from one city to a different city, and you've moved from one away team to a different away team. All of these changes in your status would affect what access you have, primarily to the Discord server, because there are so many channels on the Discord server, but might also affect your access to other systems throughout the ship. And I'll go through a detailed list of all the different systems that are impacted or might be impacted with such change of status. Safely storing personally identifiable information. So this is an issue that affects all organizations now, especially ones that operate internationally, is that we are all subject to various data privacy regulations, international data privacy regulations. A lot of jurisdictions, and South Africa is one of them, have adopted locally laws that mirror the international standards for handling data privacy, and those laws are being updated virtually annually. Starfleet International has a system whereby we can become certified on how to handle that personal identifiable information, or PII, and that is done also in terms of the Dauntless security policy or privacy policy. We might go through that in a moment. But the security department, especially the duty station holders within the security department, are required to be properly certified to handle PII so that they know what the correct protocols are to do. So what is PII? This is any information that could be used to identify a person. So it might be your full name, it might be your photograph, your home address, your location, anything like that that could be used to identify you needs to be handled in a specific way. And if you are an active duty member of the crew, you will have been asked for various preferences on how we should be handling that information on your behalf. So it's principally the responsibility of the security department to look at those preferences that you've stipulated and handle your PII in such a way that is compliant both with your declared wishes and with the international privacy laws. And then performing access reviews and audits. So this is a thing that happens. Again, I mentioned that any change of status could affect your access to various systems. And but because that is quite a complex thing to happen, what happens fairly frequently actually is somebody might change a status which should trigger a change in access, but that trigger doesn't fire for whatever reason. Either one of our automated systems doesn't pick up the change, or perhaps nobody noticed, or perhaps you neglected to mention, or maybe just somebody forgot, and then that status doesn't get updated. And those things can be left longer than they ought to, and that can be inappropriate because it might mean that you are looking at a part, or could be looking at a part of our information system that is not appropriate for your level of access. So the security department needs to do audits from time to time to make sure that only the people who are authorized to look at a particular resource, be that a Discord channel or a document or a spreadsheet or a web page or something like that, only people who are authorized to have that access, and to ensure that the people who need that access have it. So that is an audit that is done by the security team from time to time. The other side of what the security team does is promoting physical safety. So this is a bit more of a tricky situation. So this mirrors how the security teams function in the fictional Star Trek. So people like Hikaru Sulu or Commander Worf or Odo or people like that. These are the chiefs of security of those respective installations. And their job is principally around managing physical security. In a group like ours, physical security is less of a priority. It's still something that matters, but it's not something that we can expect another member of our crew to shoulder that burden entirely for ourselves. but it is worthwhile having somebody on board who's thinking about the physical safety of the crew, especially in places like, frankly, South Africa, where crime is a reality. It's something we have to navigate every day. And not only crime, but also things like venomous snakes are quite often present in this environment. And it's worthwhile having somebody thinking about the physical safety of people when we're online and when we're out in the world. So that is the security department's job, to provide advice and that kind of thing when it handles when we're talking about personal security. So one of the ways they do that is by facilitating the combat training challenge. So this is what I was talking about back here when we're talking about working to better ourselves mentally and physically. The Dauntless operates a number of monthly challenges in which we encourage members of our crew to compete against each other in finding ways to better themselves. So one of the ways we do that is, say, for example, the step challenge, which is the fitness challenge. Correction, that's what we call it. The fitness challenge, which is operated by the medical department, in which every member of the crew is encouraged to submit the steps that they've walked or the converted steps that they've logged on their various fitness tracking devices during the course of the month, and whoever has logged the most steps at the end of the month wins the challenge. There's also a reading challenge, whoever's read the most pages. There's a linguistics challenge, whoever spent the most time learning new language on Duolingo. But in addition to that is the combat training challenge, in which we challenge members of the crew to learn and study a form of physical combat. So when we're deliberately open to all kinds of different forms of combat, so it doesn't have to be karate or mokbara or any other kind of martial arts necessarily, although martial arts would certainly count as that. Any kind of way that you can learn to physically defend yourself from a threat in the world would fall under combat training. So yes, that could be martial arts, or it could be skeet shooting or target shooting or axe throwing, archery, any kind of way that you're physically directing force on a target in the world, whether it's with your bare hands or with a weapon, would fall under the combat training challenge. And we strongly encourage participation in this, not only because it's important to learn how to defend yourself, but also because a lot of combat training systems promote fitness in one way or another. Something like target shooting or archery is not that fitness intensive, but there is a fitness component to both of those. But what they all do is that they help you to learn a mastery of self in a way that regular exercise or something like dancing or yoga can't really do. And what I mean by that is a kind of an emotional mastery of self, where you learn how to understand yourself and your limits and your power in the world as an agent for change, your ability to direct force into the world, onto other people and onto things. You start to learn exactly what your capabilities are and what your limitations are. Understanding your boundaries in that way, I think, is beneficial, not only physically, but also emotionally. So combat training challenge, I think, is a very valuable thing that we should all be engaging in. And it is the security department that operates the combat training challenge. Another aspect is encouraging snake handling training. Again, I mentioned that we live in South Africa, where some of the most venomous and most dangerous snakes in the world live. And there are local institutions that will provide certifications and training on how to handle those venomous snakes so that you can remove them from the environment and do so safely, to protect yourself and protect the people and animals around you. This is something that's particularly relevant to myself. I work at an animal facility, an ecotourism facility, where we have a population of ambassador animals, cheetah outreach, but it is out in the world, and there are wild snakes that wander into our facility all the time in search of food, rodents, or whatever, and they pose a risk not only to us but also to our guests, our tourists who come to visit the facility, and to the other animals within the facility. So terribly dangerous venomous snakes, things like Cape cobras or puff adders, maybe even boomslangs. These are things that need to be isolated, captured, and removed and released safely. But we can't always rely on a third party to come and catch a snake when we see one somewhere on the facility, because by the time the guy arrives in an hour's time, we've lost sight of the snake, it's gone. So we have to have people on site who have the necessary training and equipment that they can rush to the scene somewhere on our facility, capture that snake, and hold it safely so that it can be removed later. So there are institutions like the African Snakebite Institute that offer training courses and certifications in snake handling. They also sell the relevant equipment so that you can equip yourself to handle these kinds of situations. And these skills are valuable not only in places like cheetah outreach, but also in your home. There are snake sightings all the time, especially in and around Cape Town. The part of Cape Town I live in is semi-rural, so there are large open fields with big rodent populations nearby, and there are snakes here all the time. So it's very valuable to have those kinds of skills. But just about anywhere in South Africa, even some of the densely urbanized parts of Johannesburg, you're likely to find venomous snakes from time to time. So it's worth having that ability. And it's, again, the security department's job to promote that people obtain that training. This, nobody in our team is expected to facilitate that training unless, of course, we recruit a new member who has the necessary skills to do so. Perhaps if you work for the African Snakebite Institute and you're interested in joining the USS Dauntless, that might be a role for you within our crew. But currently, there's nobody who has the ability to actually provide that training. But we can encourage that members of the crew participate in it. And the next aspect is taking reasonable steps to monitor and mitigate risks on away missions, in brackets, convention security. So convention security is a thing that we can learn through Starfleet Educational Services. So Starfleet, the International Star Trek Fan Association Incorporated, has its own in-house educational facility called Starfleet Educational Services. Used to be called Starfleet Academy. I was recently informed that some parts of educational services are still actually called officially Starfleet Academy, but that's expected to change now that Paramount has announced that the next new Star Trek series to be released will be also called Starfleet Academy. It seems unlikely that they will let us continue using that name. Anyway, so there are training courses in Starfleet Academy and educational services where you can learn convention security. So this is learning about the basic theoretical protocols of how to handle security in an open space, something like a convention. And this is a service that chapters of Starfleet International have in the past offered to local convention organizers. The Dauntless has never done this, but other chapters have, where if the local convention organizers, perhaps they're running a small nonprofit and they want to put together a local convention for all the science fiction fans in their area, that Star Trek chapter or that Starfleet chapter will offer to provide security to the convention so that they can have some uniformed security officers manning the access booths, perhaps monitoring doors, watching for shoplifters, that kind of thing. And there's some basic training available through educational services that can help you learn how to manage that kind of thing. And it's valuable to have our own internal security team equip themselves with the necessary skills. And I don't want to say equipment because equipment implies weapons, and that's not okay. We don't endorse using actual weapons, but at least equip themselves with the necessary skills to be able to handle that kind of thing. And it's not necessarily only at conventions. This can apply on just regular away missions. Again, we live in a place where crime is a real factor. And if you have at least one member of an away team keeping a weather eye on the horizon, monitoring for any potentially threatening situations, and advising the rest of the team to take steps to help to avoid or mitigate that risk, that's probably beneficial too. I'm not talking about anybody jumping in front of a bullet or putting their own life at risk or in any way endangering themselves in service of the safety of the rest of the crew. That's not something that we would ever ask or encourage from our security team. Just somebody who has the time and capacity and perhaps the skills to monitor the security situation and keep an eye on things for the rest of us so that we can all be just a little bit safer. So those are the activities of the security department. Now, who are the people of the security team? So we've got two duty stations within the security department. First is the Chief Security Officer. You'll notice that that position is currently vacant. That is not a photo of anybody there. If you're interested in applying for this position, do the same thing. You find the way to the department's page, to the security page, and then click the link Apply Here, which will take you to the relevant form. That will kick off the induction process, which is a lengthy process whereby we install new duty station holders. It involves first an interview to see if you are a suitable candidate for that role. Then there will be, assuming you pass the interview, we will begin a process of getting you signed off on all of the prerequisites. There's a list of prerequisites which we'll get to in a moment. These are things that you will need in order to possess the position. Once you've checked off all the prerequisites, you will then begin on-the-job training where you will learn how to do all of the work of the position. Only once you are confident that you are able to do the work, you will be assessed by the senior staff to see if you really can handle it. And once we are happy and you are happy and everyone is comfortable with you assuming that position, you will then take on that position of Chief Security Officer, which is that induction process is designed or intended or expected to take months, better part of a year, possibly even longer than a year. So it could take a long time. And given that that takes a long time, if you come here and you see that a position is vacant, it doesn't mean that there isn't currently somebody in the induction process for that position. All it means is that if there is somebody, they haven't yet attained that Chief Security Officer assignment, which means that you are still welcome to apply for that position. And if there is somebody who is in the queue for that spot and you're applying for a position that's already kind of spoken for, we'll have a conversation with you at that point to discuss what your options are. Perhaps you might consider applying for the next duty station down, or perhaps a duty station in a different department that might suit your skills. There are other options that might be considered if that were to happen, but that would only happen after you've submitted your application. So if you're interested in filling one of these duty station positions, please apply. And the reason we don't advertise when somebody is in induction for a position is because we want to preserve the ability to save face. Part of the point of the induction process is to ensure that the person themselves, the applicant, feels comfortable doing the job. And you might discover halfway through the induction process that you actually don't have the interest or the capacity or the ability to do the job, and you need to be able to back out from that process and not be embarrassed by the fact that you didn't complete it. So we only announce it once you've actually completed the process, and up until then, your involvement in the induction process is a secret known only to you and to certain senior staff members. Right, so that is the induction process, but what is the Chief Security Officer? The COS is a department head for the security department of the USS Dauntless. The department head acts as a communication conduit between the command department and the security department. Chief Security Officer manages the command codes matrix, the list of all secure Dauntless systems and who should have access, what access level to which. We'll go into the command codes matrix in a moment. The Chief Security Officer also manages the combat training program. This position may not be held by an enlisted member. That's pretty standard department head stuff. So what are the specific duties of the Chief Security Officer? So access control is maintaining the command codes matrix document, including updating the document with new systems as they are brought online, ensuring new appointees are granted the necessary access privileges they require, ensuring permissions aren't assigned inappropriately, and conducting an annual audit to ensure the document reflects reality. So what is this command codes matrix? Well, it looks like this. So this is a spreadsheet listing most of the digital systems that the USS Dauntless uses. Along the top, these are all the various different systems, and down the side here are all the duty station positions and also some other non-duty station positions, so that we have a neat little matrix here that tells us, if I am the Chief Science Officer, what level of access should I have to our Twitter account? And the answer is follower level. Perhaps I should have access to our YouTube channel. Yes, that would be as a manager on the YouTube channel. Or if I was the chief, the communications operator for our Facebook page, would that give me any special level of access to our LinkedIn group? No, it would not. You would just be a regular member of the LinkedIn group, and so it goes. So the security department can use this as a reference to see what level of access any given person should have. So if you as a member are promoted from a regular standard position, perhaps to an away team leader, that will affect your level of access to certain systems. So you'll have particular access to extra areas of the Discord server. You'll have extra access, I think, to our calendar. Yeah, there it is, the Google Calendar. You'll have the ability to post to the Google Calendar, and you'll have certain access to our Trello resources. If you're just a reserve who is a non-active member of the crew, you have very little access to most of our systems. You'll also notice that some of these systems have no member access at all. These systems are dormant. So they are systems that exist. We've created them and set them up at some point in the past, but for whatever reason, we decided to stop using them. We don't want to delete them. We want to keep them active so as to reserve the name, so somebody else doesn't come along and use our name on that platform. So a platform like Gilded or Player.me, if those platforms even still exist, I'm not actually sure. That's part of the annual audit process. We need to go through and see if those systems still exist. But only the owner, who is currently the commanding officer, would have access to those systems. Nobody else is authorized to access them. But if we decided at some point in the future that we wanted to activate that platform and we wanted to start using it more actively, then the command department would work with the engineering and security departments to define these other roles all the way down accordingly and assign them to the relevant members of the crew. So That is the command codes matrix, which is the principal console for the chief communications as the chief security officer. So the chief security has to update the document with new systems as they brought online. So whenever engineering is to bring a new system online, any new tool that we are decided to start using for the Dauntless, once it's moved past the testing stage, it'll be added to the command codes matrix. Ensuring new appointees are granted the necessary access privileges they require. So that's the thing I was talking about with status change. Anytime somebody is appointed to a new position, whether you're upgraded or downgraded or side graded or any other change to your status, that will affect your access privilege, and it will be that access privilege will be informed by the command codes matrix and will be up to the chief security officer to make sure that that happens. Ensuring permissions aren't assigned inappropriately. So again, making sure that people don't have access to things they shouldn't have access to, and then conducting an annual audit to ensure the document reflects reality. It's worth noting here, while I'm thinking about it, that some of these systems, just the way they're set up, doesn't allow the chief security officer to manage the person's access directly. Something like the Duolingo classroom, for example. This has actually changed. This is out of date, but we haven't had our annual audit yet, so we haven't yet updated it to reflect it. In this case, the Duolingo classroom, the teacher status would belong to the chief science officer, but Duolingo doesn't allow the assigning of admin rights or moderator rights to any other users within the group. There's only the teacher, because it's called classroom, and regular users. And the teacher has full administrative access to the entire tool, and nobody else has any other access to change anything except their own personal stuff. So when we have examples like that, it would be up to the chief security officer to inform the relevant administrator on that platform that there is a change required, and to please update the relevant access for that person so that it can be done. So the chief security officer have to make sure that the change happens, even if he is not able to do that change himself. But yes, chief security officer's job to ensure that the change happens. Then there's training, and that is in collaboration with the science departments, training and assessing members on the security department on the departmental orientation, which is a work in progress. It's not currently live. And then command codes, matrix management, and auditing protocols. So these protocols have been partially documented, and there will be a training course developed eventually on how to manage these things properly. And that will permit the duty station holders within the security department to deputize standard position holders within the department with certain duties relating to the command codes matrix. Now, most standard position holders can't do a lot of administrative work on these platforms because standard position holders don't have a lot of access. But what they can do perhaps is they can assist with audits, they can monitor access logs, that kind of thing. So it would be up to the duty station holders, or at least the chief security officer, to manage that training, to update and complete the departmental orientation, and to finish documenting those protocols so as to train other security department personnel in doing that work. And it would also be beneficial to train other duty station holders on board for the exact reason that I articulated a moment ago when it comes to things like the Duolingo classroom, where you've got somebody who is not in the security department who is responsible for managing access to a tool. You might need to make sure that that crew member has the appropriate training to be able to do that management on your behalf. In this case, it's beneficial that it's the chief science officer because the CSO would be involved in developing that training course. So he should probably already have that information by the time the course goes live. But you see the benefit in having that. Then we move on to the general department head stuff. So departmental supervision, maintaining open lines of communication with members of the security department. What this means is that the department head should be making contact with every member of his team on a monthly basis. What that contact should look like, ideally, it would be in the form of a crew report. So on the last day of every month, every member of the crew is asked to submit a report detailing their activities for the month, including what courses they completed, what missions they attended, what public service hours they logged, and anything else that they'd like to report. That then gets collated by the department head into the DMSR, the departmental monthly status report, which is down here, which is submitted then to the executive officer and the commanding officer, who then condense that information down into the MSR, the monthly status report on behalf of the chapter, which is then sent up to Starfleet Command. We did a whole video on the reporting chain back a few months ago in the briefing series. So if you'd like to learn more about our reporting standards, please go take a look there. But that is essentially what we would like that that maintaining open lines of communication to look like would be in the form of that report, but it doesn't have to be the report. It's not mandatory. It can be any kind of contact. It can be a private message conversation, a phone call, a chat on one of our missions. It could be a cup of coffee, anything. And any kind of contact, direct contact between the department head and the crew member would suffice as that departmental supervision. Nomination, making recommendations and nominations for appointments to duty stations in the security department. This is an item that actually should be added to all of the other duty stations, all the other department head duty stations within the Dauntless. Hasn't yet. I wonder why that's the case. So this is when a department has an open duty station position. The department head within that position would be looking to recruit members to fill that position. And once they found a potential nominee, excuse me, I've got somebody at my door. This is very strange. I apologize. Apologies for that. That was unexpected. All right, where were we? Oh yes, so nomination. So it would be that the department head's role, among other things, to look for people who might be suitable candidates to fill that duty station permission and to make nominations, to make suggestions that those people then step up and take on those positions. In other words, they're responsible for recruiting for duty stations within their department. Reporting, this is the thing I mentioned about the DMSR. We also have another thing here, the Crow's Nest, which is generating content for the internal video update series. The Crow's Nest used to be our internal newsletter many years ago. It is now a daily video series produced by the communications department. I put daily in scare quotes because it doesn't come out every day. Sometimes it doesn't come out for weeks or even months at a time, but we never do more than one a day. And what it is a short news update video, a minute or two in length, detailing any particular information that might be relevant to the crew on that day. And it is the department head's role to generate content to be sent to the communications department so that they can produce a Crow's Nest video about that with that announcement for you. Delegation is performing any and all duties the Deputy Chief Security Officer is unable to perform. So the Deputy is the only other duty station in the security department at the moment. So it is the role of the department head to ensure that all of the work within the security department is done. So all of the items all of the tasks that need to be completed by anyone in the security department ultimately rests on the shoulders of the department head. So if the deputy is unable to do any of the work assigned to him, then his work flows up to the department head, and he has to make sure that that happens. Whether or not that's doing the work himself, it might be finding somebody else who's able to do the work and asking them very nicely and bribing them with tea and cake or whatever, but making sure that that work is done. And then Officer of the Watch is also standard department head stuff. So officers of the Watch monitor Dauntless communications channels during convenient hours and take swift action should any inappropriate content be posted or other issues arise. So there are duty station holders within the communications department whose job it is to keep an eye on our various communications channels, but they can't be watching them all 24/7. And so all the senior staff and all the senior duty station holders are expected to keep an eye on things, because we're all people. People sometimes post things to the wrong place, or they say things they shouldn't say. Perhaps they're emotional, perhaps they had a little too much to drink and post inappropriate things. Anybody can do silly things like that. And when that happens, which doesn't happen very often, then somebody needs to step in and say, that shouldn't have been said. Perhaps delete the post, perhaps have a word with the person who posted it. But as I said, that's rare. We just need to be vigilant for when and if it does in fact take place. Chief Security Officer reports to the Executive Officer, who's the first officer of the ship. And here we get to the qualifications. So these are the things that ideally the Chief Security Officer applicant should have when entering the induction process. You don't actually have to have any of these as when you fill in the form. The more of them you have, the better. But if your interview goes well, the first step of the induction process will then be to help you check off all of these items. So we'll make sure that you have all of these things before you actually get the position, but you don't necessarily have to have them all lined up as you step into the induction process. So in order to be considered, the applicant must already be an active participant in a bare minimum of 50% of all USS Dauntless activities measured over a 3-month time frame. So why 50% of all Dauntless activities? The security department is not one of the departments that runs its own missions very often. There are occasions where security might be responsible for a given away mission. Perhaps we have a historical European martial arts training session, or a paintball game, or laser tag, or something like that. Those would fall under the auspices of security. It would be a combination of security and tactical. But generally speaking, on a monthly basis, security doesn't run a lot of away missions. Because of that, or any kind of missions for that matter. So because of that, it's not fair to expect security department members to have to attend a bunch of missions that don't exist. So instead, security department are encouraged to attend all Dauntless missions. And because the security team are essentially a support team to the rest of the crew, it makes sense that they be embedded in every aspect of Dauntless life. So up to 50% of all Dauntless activities measured over a 3-month time frame. What kind of activities? We're talking about online activities, so that's regular missions, in-person activities, so that's away missions, and monthly challenges. So challenges like the combat training challenge or the linguistics challenge. As long as you've participated in 50% of each of these over the last 3 months, then you've met that criteria, and they are measured separately. So we'll look at all of the in-person activities over the last 3 months and see how many of those you've completed, all of the online activities, and all of the challenges, and those will be measured during the course of that process. Applicant must also be an active user of Discord, Google Workspace, Meta Business Suite, YouTube Creator Studio, TweetDeck, and Trello. This list changes all the time. In fact, we don't currently use TweetDeck. In fact, I think TweetDeck is dead. I think Twitter bought it and killed it. So that list will change from time to time, but that is a list of the primary tools used by members of the crew, and the security department needs to have, at least the chief security officer needs to have a working knowledge of how those platforms work, so that he can help to manage access to those various platforms. Experience or certification in an IAM administration beneficial but not required. IAM is Identity Access Management or something like that. It was one of those acronyms in acronyms in IT, the 3-letter acronyms that most people don't know what it stands for. But basically, IAM admins are responsible for managing exactly this kind of stuff. So managing who has access to what tools within a given digital environment. And if you have experience in working in an IAM environment, so much the better. You might have Amazon Web Services offers certification in IAM, which is relatively inexpensive and quite thorough. So if you have that, that'd be great, but you don't strictly need it. It's just helpful if you already have exposure to how this stuff works, so that we don't have to teach you from the ground up how tags work on Discord and that kind of thing. So then required in order to qualify for the application to the position is grade 02 or lieutenant junior grade or higher. So you need to be a junior lieutenant. If you've already completed all of these, you're probably already much higher than lieutenant junior grade already, but just in case some weird thing has happened, you need to make sure that you're that already. You need to have Officers Training School or the OTS from Staff Lead Educational Services. This is the basic requirement for any commissioned officer on board, and it's probably the first exam you'll do at Staff Lead Academy. It's the first exam most people do there. Then we have the Staff Lead Data Protection Policy, the SFDPP 101 and 102. This is the big nasty exam that a lot of people have to do, and what's even nastier about it is that you have to redo it every year. So it's the certification within educational services for that data, that personally identifying information, how to manage and handle that information on behalf of users of your systems. Again, this course is updated annually to reflect changes in international laws about these kinds of things. We are an international organization, not only Staff Lead International, but the Dauntless ourselves. We are an international organization. Just because we're based in Cape Town, it doesn't mean we only have members in South Africa. We have members overseas too. So we have to be up to date on all of these regulations, and that's what the SFDPP certification is there to do. There are 2 exams to get the initial certification, 101 and 102, and then there is an annual renewal exam that's released, I think it's in January every year, and you have to complete that renewal exam in order to keep your certification up to date. If that certification drops, we have to remove your access to all platforms that manage PII. Then there's the Bridge Officer Certification Chief Security Officer. This is more of a conceptual exam. So it's actually not one exam, it's a collection of exams. I think it's 8 or 10 different courses that you're expected to complete through educational services in order to check all the boxes. Included in the Chief Security Officer, Bridge Officer certification is several courses on convention security. So the stuff that I was talking about earlier about learning how to monitor a room for potential security risks and what to do, what action to take, that kind of stuff is included in those courses, which is, it's pretty cool. So it's beneficial to have that from a real world point of view. But generally speaking, the certification is aimed at instilling the candidate with a sense of what the conceptual or metaphorical underpinning of this position is. So as this position develops over time, what new roles or duties would we expect to add to the portfolio of the chief security officer based on the original metaphor as seen in the fictional Star Trek chief security officers there? What other tasks and what might we expect the chief security officer to perform? So understanding the theoretical and ideological underpinning to a security officer is beneficial, and that is obtained there. Then there's the new recruit orientation course, which we do here on board the Dauntless. It's operated by the science department. All new active duty members are required to complete the 5-day new recruit orientation course. You'll need to be an active member of Starfleet in good standing. It will be impossible to research your Starfleet data protection policy exams annually if you're not a Starfleet member in good standing, because you need that membership in order to access Starfleet Academy. There's a moderate annual fee to be an SFI member. It doesn't cost very much. We don't like the idea of requiring people to pay money in order to become a member, but that certification is essential, and the only way to get that is through SFI. So that's just how it is. You need to be signed off on the Command Codes Matrix protocol. Again, that protocol sign-off doesn't currently exist, but the next time somebody is in induction process for the Chief Security Officer role, that protocol will be documented and a sign-off will be created for it. And then they need to have a correct and accurate standard duty uniform. So that's this one, the Class B uniform, not this exact one. This is the Admiral's version. Unless you are an Admiral, you wouldn't be wearing this one. But the general officer's version of the SDU, and that is because senior staff members like department heads are expected to represent the crew and the Dauntless as a group, not only with their physical presence and with their expertise, but also with their face. And the best way to represent us with your face is to have your face framed by a beautiful, official, and elegant and formal standard duty uniform. So that is a requirement of all senior duty station holders. And then required within 6 months of appointment to the position is the PD 100. That's the Professional Development Level 1 certification from the Starfleet Marine Training Center. Oh, there's a typo there, which also falls under Starfleet Educational Services. This has a lot of very interesting practical stuff about not only life within an organization like Starfleet, but also life in general. And then there is a privilege of this role, and that is that upon appointment, the Chief Security Officer is granted a conditional promotion to the grade of 03, which is Lieutenant. After holding the position for 6 continuous months, the promotion becomes permanent. In all likelihood, once you've completed all of these, you are probably well beyond Lieutenant, but in case you're not, somehow that's happened, then this would kick in. So we have a second duty station within the security department, and that is the Deputy Chief Security Officer. And as you might imagine, the Deputy Chief is the principal assistant to the Chief Security Officer, right-hand person, ready to step in and do anything that the Chief Security Officer needs done. If the Chief Security Officer is at capacity or is at diminished capacity for some reason, then the Deputy would step in and fill in any gaps, ideally. One important difference between the two is that the Deputy Chief Security Officer can be held by an enlisted member, but if they do so, they use a different title, and that title is Master at Arms. So the Master at Arms is the enlisted version of a Deputy Chief Security Officer. You can't have both a Deputy and a Master at Arms. You have either one, but it would depend on whether you are not a commissioned officer or a non-com as to which title you use. Also, the job role changes slightly depending on which one it is. So again, we've got the same basic rules. We've got access control, we've got departmental supervision, reporting, delegation, all of the things that the Chief Security Officer does. The Deputy Chief needs to be ready to stand in and assist or take over should the need arise. If the Chief Security Officer is ill or has a loss in the family or something and can't participate for a few days, the Deputy needs to be ready to step in and do whatever to make sure that things still tick along without the Chief at the helm for a few days. Not the helm, that would be the helm officer, but you know what I mean. The deputy chief obviously reports to the chief security officer, and the qualifications here are very similar. So again, you've got that 50% bare minimum requirement for activity over a 3-month time frame. We've got the same list of tools, and IAM administration is beneficial but not required. These requirements are also very similar. I think the only difference here is that the bridge officer certification is a post-appointment requirement. It's no longer a pre-appointment requirement, but it's worth having anyway. The rest of these are all the same. And then for the Master at Arms, again, it's slightly different. The Master at Arms doesn't need that grade requirement. So it's an enlisted grade, E6 or Petty Officer First Class. And there's no requirement for the officers training school. But you still need to be an active member of staff lead in good standing so that you can get that SFDPP certification. So even if you choose not to be an officer for whatever reason, you still need to be an active member of SFI. And there are privileges for both. The rank automatic promotion thing kicks in for both. So for the deputy chief, it's to 03 or lieutenant, and for Master at Arms, it's to E7 or chief petty officer, and then after 6 months it becomes permanent. For the deputy chief, if the chief of security position becomes vacant, the deputy is automatically considered an applicant for the position regardless of his or her qualifications. If you are the deputy and the chief security officer becomes vacant, again, you are automatically considered an applicant. You have the right to refuse. If you don't want to take on that position, that is your right, but you don't need to fill in the form and apply. We'll automatically assume that that's happening unless you say, no, thank you. That is not, however, accurate for the Master at Arms. The Master at Arms, being an enlisted personnel, cannot ascend and become the chief security officer. We also have one non-humanoid personnel in the security department. We call that the emergency security hologram. You'll see he is represented by an anthropomorphic tortoise. The ESH is a cluster of semi-automated Discord bots designed to assist the security staff. So he's not just one bot, he is several bots. I think he's 3 different bots at the moment, might be more, might be less on any given day. We can spin up additional security bots as needed. But these bots are there to assist the security team with various things. So whether that's notifying the team when a new user has joined the Dauntless Discord server, or whether it's addressing complaints, or automatically assigning roles on request, or things like that. The various Discord bots are there to assist. There's also the Discord Puppet bot, which has the profile picture that looks like this, which is just a regular Discord account that can be used by another member of the senior staff as needed to interact with users or to run through orientation courses or whatever. So some of them are fully automated, some of them are not automated at all. They are puppets used by other users, but they all have in common that they kind of sort of look like an anthropomorphic tortoise in a staff lead uniform. Right, so those are the positions within the security department, and of course there are the standard positions which have no duties or requirements assigned. Anybody can request assignment to the security department as a standard position holder, and then you will be able to assist in any way that your access privileges allow. If you're a standard position holder and you decide from your own volition to go and get yourself the SFDPP certification, that will allow you to help out the security department head, at least the security duty station holders, with a lot more tasks than other people would be. So even if you don't want to be a duty station holder in the security department, but you'd like to be able to help out, having that SFDPP certification, which is available to any SFI member in good standing, you just need to write the exam. Having that would be beneficial, both potentially to you, to your staff lead career, but also to the rest of the team, because it means you'd be able to help out in all kinds of ways that otherwise wouldn't be the case. All right, so yes, okay, so that is all the stuff of the security department. I think we can switch back to this, and then I can look at questions and comments. What have we got? All right. So security department, this will be a short video. Yeah, no, unfortunately it hasn't been a short video. Number 1, don't wear red. That is true. Our security department does not, in fact, wear red. So that is fine. As long as you're wearing your correct uniform, you will not be in any danger. Captain Van says, and the ship goes pew pew pew. The ship doesn't, well, I mean, the ship might, but that wouldn't be the security department. So security and tactical, at least in Star Trek, are 2 different roles, often occupied by the same person. Somebody like Commander Worf was both on the Enterprise D. He was both the chief security and the tactical officer. So he was responsible for managing the security on board the ship. So if there were if there's an enemy boarding party or something, he would be responsible for repelling those enemy soldiers, but also he was responsible for the ship's weapons. The same is true of Malcolm Reed. He was also both tactical and security, but technically speaking, those are two different roles. And in fact, on the Dauntless, we don't have a tactical officer position at all at the moment. We've only got security because tactical is kind of not really a department at the moment. Colonel Ubey says, human password manager. Yes, kind of in a way. Yeah. So each user still needs to manage their own passwords, but the security team are there to make sure that that your password gives you access to the things that you need. So hopefully that doesn't mean actually generating and looking after passwords for you. Yeah, okay. I was going to tell an anecdote, but it's a story I probably shouldn't tell. Colonel Hubert says, I do this for my co-workers. Yes, yes. The story I shouldn't tell relates to that too. Frank says, red shirt equals safe in this era. One would imagine so. Yes, hopefully that would be the case. Hubert says, I think we have very few red shirts on our ship. That doesn't help the red shirt theory. Well, our red shirts tend not to die. They move on to other departments and switch to other shirts. So the red shirts that we have had in the past have all moved on and become either gold shirts or blue shirts. The only two permanent red shirts are, at the moment, myself and the EXO, Fleet Captain Lynch. We're the only ones who wear red uniforms permanently. Everybody else, at the moment, it should be a temporary assignment. Captain Van Kroonen says, Boomslang are terrible to run into. Beware of your surroundings. Yeah, I mean, Boomslang they have terrible venom. They're unlikely to bite. Which is interesting. They've got tiny little fangs right at the back of their mouth, and they know that you are much, much larger than them. They don't want to get into a fight with you. And as long as they can escape, which they typically can if they're in a tree, then they choose to do that rather than bite you. But if they do bite you, that can be very bad. The ones that are typically the most dangerous, statistically speaking, are the Cape Cobra. There are more lethal snake bites by Cape Cobra than any other snake, I think, in the world. Just because they live in and amongst people, their primary diet is rodents and other snakes, which are animals that live around humans. So they are in human areas very often, and those lethal interactions happen regularly. Boomslang's attacks happen very rarely. Puff adders, they can happen from time to time. You're more likely to step on a puff adder as you're going for a hike than anything else. You're not likely to be bitten by a puff adder in your own home, but it could happen. It's not so much the case down here in the Western Cape, but further up north, you have to deal with things like black mambas, which are deadly, especially if you're out in the bush. That can be a very bad interaction. Fortunately, they prefer to stay away from people. So unless you're out in the bush, you're not likely to encounter a black mamba, but it could happen. Colonel Bear says, we have a LinkedIn. Yes, we do. We have a LinkedIn group. You're welcome to go and join that if you like. Apparently LinkedIn still exists. I hear people talking about it. It's a surprise to me every time I hear that, but that is a thing. So if you'd like to go and investigate that possibility, you're welcome to it. And then a member of our security team, probably me, will make sure that you have the relevant access. Frank Kernan says, trust me, I'm a professional. Yes, professional. That's true. Captain Frankrona says, TweetDeck is the way of the dinosaurs, gone in dust now. It is X Pro, I think. Yes, I think it was something like that. TweetDeck was originally a third-party tool that allowed you to manage multiple Twitter accounts from a single interface. It was bought by Twitter a few years ago, but then when Twitter turned into X, they've recycled into something else entirely. There are other tools available that do what TweetDeck used to do, but we don't currently use any of those. Colonel Hubert says, I think about our emergency security hologram. He is Legion. Yes. He is. So there are many of him. All right, that is all of the questions we have. Oh, I see we've got John Hardy from the USS Essex saying hello, welcome, glad to have you here. That is all I can see on the YouTube chat. So thank you everybody for joining. I'd like to just conclude by reminding everybody that the security department is very important to life here aboard the Dauntless. They're responsible for maintaining the integrity and safety of the Dauntless, of our digital environment, and also our personal selves. And I'd like to encourage everybody to, if you're not already involved in security department activities, things like the Combat Training Challenge, or just learning more about personal security, I'd encourage that you find out more about that kind of thing. The security department of the Dauntless is vital because they take personal responsibility for the safety and security of all crew members, both online and in person. They do this by managing access control, equipping members with the tools to protect themselves, and sometimes by putting their own bodies in harm's way to keep us safe. We owe them a debt of gratitude now and in perpetuity. Thank you. That is all for today. You are dismissed. Swart out. The Starfleet life with the USS Dauntless. Are you brave enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes